Correct. This case was very similar to the Burnett case in Next. It all began when John Moore visited the UCLA Medical Center on October the 5th of 1976. After he was diagnosed with hairy cell leukemia, Dr. David Goldie, who was a physician and cancer researcher at the time, took samples from Moore to confirm the diagnosis. Moore had signed a consent form authorizing the hospital to dispose of any tissue. He was then practiced a splenectomy by surgeons at the UCLA Medical Center. Moore then returned to normal very quickly, and further examination of his spleen led Goldie to discover that Moore's blood cells produced protein that stimulated the growth of white blood cells, the type of cells that helps protect the body from infections. Moore then moved to Seattle, Washington, and kept returning to the UCLA Medical Center for follow-ups with Dr. Goldie from 1976 until 1983. Soon, Moore discovered that Goldie had patented his cells and naming himself, along with his research assistant, the inventors of this cell line. After learning of this patent, Moore filed a lawsuit against UCLA Medical Center.
A real-life example. Henrietta Lacks was diagnosed with cervical cancer and died in 1951. Her doctor found Henrietta's cells to be immortal, meaning they don't die after divisions. Researchers isolated her cells, continuously multiplied it, and experimented with them for many, many years. Up until recently, this was done without her and her family's consent. Henrietta's cells were used for cancer, AIDS, gene mapping, and other diseases that are included in over 11,000 patents, and none of which compensates Henrietta nor her family. An interesting fact, her cells were the first ever mass-produced, upwards to near 20 tons of her cells. 20 tons!
The judge sided with the university because Mr. Burnett signed all the papers or documents that gave the right to doctors to get his cells. Since the cells would be for something good and for they can test it on things that might benefit the world, the judge didn't mind to give the right to the university. This is an example of eminent domain, which means the right of a government or its agent to expropriate private property for public use, with payment of compensation. Also, the attorney from the university basically asked questions that would twist Mr. Burnett's story. With this, Burnett was confused and didn't know how to interpret his facts. Since the state can do an eminent domain, Mr. Burnett was going to lose because of this law. The key to this case is eminent domain, which is the Fifth Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. It allowed the university to continue experimenting on the Burnett cells because it was public service and the ownership of his cells were a non-issue since his cells were considered a waste material. Now Amos here will explain the impact of this ruling.
Spoilers. Now imagine if Dog the Bounty Hunter just burst into your house and claimed that you stole your own cells. Now, since you don't have the right to own your own discarded tissue or blood, but yet you still have to take ownership of what happens to those cells? But even then, we have to ask, is this fair or just? Is eminent domain a sound and logical legal process? Currently, as the system stands, we will now have to ask ourselves questions of how much do we actually own of our own body? And with that in mind, how far should we take it? Well, my opinion on the matter is, why, yes, of course I do have an opinion. I believe we should let Big Brother handle everything.